lives. Whether it's reading a post on social media, reading an email, reading a contract, or simply reading a book for leisure, reading will always play some sort of role in our lives every single day. That's why it's important to make sure that your reading skills in English are up to scratch. Like I mentioned in Module 1, Lesson 7, which was our previous reading lesson, simply decoding words on a piece of paper is not reading. Because, as you may know, we often find ourselves reading a long paragraph only to realize that you have no idea what the meaning of the paragraph is. Even first language speakers have that problem. Reading actually means extracting specific information as well as the general gist of it all from a written text. Like most things, it does take practice. There is no magic formula that will make you a brilliant reader overnight, but you might remember that I gave you some reading tips in Module 1, Lesson 7. These tips are specifically tailored for the IELTS reading section, but can also be applied to reading scenarios in your day-to-day life, providing you with the tools you need to be an efficient and successful reader in all aspects of your life. You will be given the opportunity to practice, and by the end of the lesson you should be able to do the following. Skim an intermediate difficulty level text for gist. Scan an intermediate text for specific information, as well as answer questions about an intermediate text. Now, what makes this lesson different from the last reading lesson is that today we will be looking at a slightly more difficult text than last time. However, don't worry, it's only a small step above the last text you practiced on. Just like last time, we will be looking at a text from an official IELTS practice reading text. So you will be given the real experience in today's lesson, which should prove to be very beneficial in your preparation for the IELTS reading section. But before we begin, I think you already know what we need to do first. We need to review your Lesson 6 challenge. We need to follow up on what you learned in the last lesson and make sure we're still on the same page. Now, in the last lesson, you were challenged to convert the following sentences into reported speech. I told him, "You're not allowed to walk on the grass." He explained, "It's cold because the window is open." Kate said to Michael, "My house is around the corner." Let's look at the first sentence. I told him, "You're not allowed to walk on the grass." What is the tense of part A? It's past simple tense. You can see that from the word told, which is the past tense form of the word tell. As you learned in the last lesson, if the tense of part A is in any kind of past tense, the tense of part B will move back one tense when you convert the sentence to reported speech. Now let's go over the conversion process again. Here's the reported speech version of the sentence. I told him that he wasn't allowed to walk on the grass. So, what has happened here? Well, of course, in part A, the comma has been removed, just like before. We also know that the quotation marks have been removed in part B, since these are no longer the exact words. We've also added the word that, and you has been changed to he. Has the tense of part B changed? Yes, because part A is no longer in present tense. Now it's in past simple tense. So if part A is in any kind of past tense, part B will move back one tense. That's why part B is now also past simple tense. Now let's look at the second sentence. He explained, "It's cold because the window is open." Now what is the tense of part A? It's past simple tense. And we know that from the word explained, which is in the past tense form. So we know that the tense of part B will move back one tense when we convert the sentence to reported speech. Let's go over the conversion process again. Here we have the reported speech version of the sentence. He explained that it was cold because the window was open. Now all the regular processes have taken place, including the removal of the comma and inverted commas, and the addition of the word that. Now has the tense of part B changed? Yes, because part A is no longer in present tense, it's in past simple tense. So as a result, part B has moved back one tense, from present simple in direct speech to past simple in reported speech. Let's look at the third and final sentence now. Kate said to Michael, "My house is around the corner." Now, part A is in past tense. So we know that the tense of part B will move back one tense when we convert the sentence to reported speech. Here we have the reported speech version of the sentence. Kate said to Michael that her house was around the corner. Now all the regular processes have taken place, including the removal of the comma and inverted commas, and the addition of the word that. Now, has the tense of part B changed? Yes, because part A is in past simple tense. So as a result, part B has moved back one tense from lesson for this course. We're going to start with a recap of the reading strategies because I know it has been a while since we've spoken about them. You'll be given a chance to practice each phase of the IELTS reading after each recap. Now, can you remember what steps to take in the IELTS reading section? Imagine you are sitting in the exam room right now about to take the IELTS reading test. What would you do first? Where would you start? Think about it. Well, in the last reading lesson, I recommended that you start by previewing the text. In other words, use your background knowledge to predict what the text may be about. And what would you do after previewing the text? I recommended you read the questions and highlight the keywords in the questions. And what about next? What do you do when you're done with that? Do you remember? Well, you'd skim the text for its gist or general meaning. And what's next? Next, you can scan the text for specific information that may answer the questions and highlight keywords that match those in the questions. Now, what do you think comes next? Well, finally, you'd answer the questions, and if there's anything you can't answer, you'd get back to the unanswered questions if and when you have time. Don't waste time trying to answer questions you don't know. We will now zoom into each of these steps to make sure we're still on the same page about what they mean and why each step is important. Now, do you remember what previewing is? Previewing is what you do before you begin to read the text. When you preview a text, you read the title and then use your knowledge about the world to predict what the text might be about. You don't need to write anything down, You simply take a moment to think about it. Do you remember why previewing is necessary? The schema theory suggests that your background knowledge will guide your comprehension of a text. In other words, your knowledge and understanding of the world will make it possible for you to understand a text. You need to be able to relate a text to your own cultural experience and understanding so that it will make sense to you. So let's put that into practice and preview a text by simply looking at a title. Here is the title of a text: Car Theft. This text was extracted from an official IELTS practice test. Here are some questions you can ask yourself in your head as a means of previewing the text. Firstly, a keyword review. What do you know about car theft? Now, you might already be aware that car theft refers to stealing someone else's car. So, the next question might be a bit of an obvious question, but you do need to get into the habit of asking yourself, what might the text be about? Well, my guess is that it's about car theft. It will probably give more information about car theft and perhaps even some ways to avoid it, or maybe what to do if your car gets stolen. Now, where could you find the text? Perhaps in a magazine or a newspaper, or perhaps it's an online article. It might even be a government-issued document to help citizens avoid or mitigate car theft. These are all some things you should consider when previewing the text. We are essentially making predictions about the text based on our knowledge about the world. Now, step 2 is reading the questions. So what you do is, of course, read each question. Then I recommend you highlight some of the key words in each of the questions. Do you remember what keywords are? Keywords are important words that capture the main meaning of a sentence. Now, these questions were extracted from an official IELTS practice test. As you can see, these are the types of questions where you fill in the blanks to complete the sentences. Take a moment to read the questions. Great. Now have a look at the matching keywords I found. Contact your insurance company is synonymous to call insurance company. Of course, bank shows up in both the text and the questions. Still making payments is closely related to owe money, since you wouldn't be making payments on your car if you didn't owe money. Now, once you've taken all these steps, it's finally time to answer the questions. Here are some tips for answering the questions. Firstly, if there's a question you don't know, just leave it blank and come back to it later if you have time. The next tip is to practice what you have learned on the IELTS practice reading tests on the IELTS website. The more you practice, the quicker you will be able to finish the reading section of the IELTS. Remember, there is a time limit. Try to answer the questions for this text yourself. The text, the questions, and the potential answers are in this lesson's summary note. Change as much of your usual reading content as possible to English texts. For example, buy an English newspaper, choose to read English articles online, or even read some English short stories. The purpose of this challenge is to help you get used to different genres of written English. The more you read English content in your everyday life, the easier reading English will become. Plus, it will help you with your writing and speaking skills because it will improve your vocabulary. If you want, you can end off this lesson. I'd like to leave you with a tip. When you are reading in your day-to-day life, you will inevitably come across some words you don't know. When this happens, look up the words and write them down. Research has shown that writing information down by hand helps your brain to remember the information. I recommend getting a notebook and starting a vocabulary list. This way, your vocabulary will grow rapidly and you'll become better at writing and speaking due to your wonderful range of words.